Yuka, as we would expect, global markets, they're having a wild trading day amid the ongoing conflict in Iran.
Yeah, wild swings indeed, especially in the United States. Now, crude oil prices surged to almost $120 a barrel earlier this Monday amid fears the supply disruption from the Gulf region could continue for a long time. But in late afternoon, the trend reversed course after CBS reported that US President Donald Trump had suggested the war was nearing its end and also said that he was thinking about taking over the Strait of Hormuz. Brent crude pulled back to settle at just below $99, then kept falling, while the US's WTI settled below $95 and continued to sink below $84 a barrel. That's about 25% lower than the day's high. US stocks clawed their way back from a steep sell-off in the final half hour of trading, with all three main indexes ending the day in positive territory.
Meanwhile, G7 countries have been considering a coordinated release of emergency oil reserves to cushion supply shocks.
Yeah, Sharon, that was another development today that eased some price pressure off the oil market. The G7 finance ministers held a virtual meeting this Monday to discuss the idea of tapping into their reserves called for by the International Energy Agency. For now, however, they decided not to take such action just yet, but said that they were prepared to take all necessary measures. Here's the finance minister of France, the current rotating chair of the G7, speaking earlier.
We're not there yet. What we've agreed upon is to use any necessary tools, if need be, to stabilize the market, including the potential release of necessary stockpiles.
And you get the price shock from the conflict. It's starting already to make itself felt right around the world. Fuel prices climbing, including here in France.
Well, last week, the French government held talks with fuel distributors and urged them against unreasonably hiking prices at the pumps. But across the country, like elsewhere in Europe, drivers have been seeing prices per litre go above €2 and are bracing for a further rise. Luke Traeger has more.
Around the world, motorists are discovering that the war in Iran has hit them in the pocket.
It's €2.16. That's expensive. At this rate, we'll soon stop using the car.
It's hard on the wallet. What am I supposed to do with this? It won't get me 100 kilometers.
Gulf oil states have begun scaling back production, with existing storage nearing limits, and no way to get 20% of the world's oil through a blockaded Strait of Hormuz, and there's no end in sight to the conflict.
I've seen the prices for diesel have risen a lot. I expect the worst in the coming months.
Oil prices surged to nearly $120 a barrel on Monday before pulling back. It left both Hungary and Croatia announcing fuel price caps as the European Union sought to ease fears of a crunch.
There is no imminent oil supply shortage in Europe. Per our rules, all member states must have the 90 days emergency stocks. This was put in place during the recent energy crisis.
The fear, though, isn't just that the war won't end that quickly. It's that it's already widened to engulf targets that aren't military, from pipelines to ships to refineries.
The war or the conflict, the military operations might have an impact on the infrastructure, because those kind of hits might take a longer time to repair than actually the closing of the Hormuz.
And that would leave much of the world, especially Europe and Asia, facing its worst energy crisis since the 1970s.
And Saudi Arabia offering crude oil on the spot market, a rare move by the kingdom.
Well, the country usually sells most of its crude oil through long-term contracts on the futures market rather than the spot market. But Bloomberg earlier reported that state-run Saudi Aramco had offered about 4.6 million barrels of crude oil across different grades in recent days. Now, daily tanker passages through the Strait of Hormuz have reduced to almost nothing from about 100 before the war. With storage space running out, data shows the UAE, Kuwait and Iraq and Saudi Arabia have all started pumping less. The kingdom exported more than 7 million barrels per day before the war, 6 million of which passing through the Strait of Hormuz. Saudi Aramco has been rushing to reroute its oil exports from the Persian Gulf to the Red Sea via pipeline, boosting shipments from the western coast by about 50% to about 2.3 million barrels. But total output is still far below pre-war levels. One analyst describes the current situation as an oil crisis for the ages. Let's take a listen.
There's really no substitute for resuming the flow of oil and gas exports from the Gulf. The world just can't live without, we consume more than 100 million barrels per day. So to be missing 15 million barrels a day of crude, 5 or 6 of refined products like gas oil, jet fuel, gasoline, can't have it. The economies just won't work. We would go into a recession in the economies of the world, and we would probably have runaway inflation.
That's it from the business desk.
Yuka, thanks so much for that. Yuka Woya there with today's business news.